Hi, I'm Dan Gable with Shore Murphy and Associates of Casey, and this is another episode of Big Agent in a Small Town. One of the most rewarding and favorite parts of my job is getting to help small business owners, and especially getting to help new small business owners. It's really exciting to start a business, but also can be scary, and there are a lot of things to consider as well too. And insurance is one of the most important things to consider, and especially if you're a contractor starting a new contracting company. And today I just want to walk through the coverages that you may need when starting your own contracting business and briefly explain those and why those coverages can be really important. So probably the most important coverage that you'll have as a contractor is general liability. What general liability does, it covers claims of bodily injury or property damage due to your negligence. So, for example, an excavation contractor, if you're digging and happen to damage a fiber optic line, and that fiber optic line has to be replaced, that would fall under general liability. If you're an electrical contractor and due to an issue you did with a wiring job, it causes a building to burn down. That property damage is something that would fall under general liability. Let's say you're a carpentry contractor and you do a remodeling job where you put in stairs and someone trips and falls and says it's due to a defect of the stairs you put in. That bodily injury would fall under general liability. So that obviously is an incredibly important coverage. With contractors, normally your general liability premium is going to be based on payroll. So there's normally a flat payroll number used for owners, and then your actual employee payroll if you have employees. On top of that is how the premium is figured out. Oh, and then at the end of the policy year, the insurance company will do an audit to see what your actual payroll was versus the projected at the beginning of the year. And if your actual payroll is more than your projected, there's an additional amount due. If your actual payroll is less than projected, then you'll normally receive a refund on that. The term audit can be kind of intimidating. With most insurance companies, it's pretty low key. You'll get some forms in the mail to fill out, or possibly have to do a phone audit where it's just a phone conversation. Another thing too on general liability is most companies have some kind of enhancement endorsements which add a list of extra coverages as well too, normally for a pretty affordable premium. I do recommend in most cases to add that general liability and enhancement as well too. So that's another thing to consider on general liability. From a cost perspective, contractors like electricians, plumbers will probably be on the lower end from a premium perspective. Of trades like excavation, carpentry are probably going to be a little more on the higher end of that. Next coverage, the coverage that's really important is what's called inland marine coverage. What inland marine coverage does is it provides coverage for your property, whether it is at your main location, in premises, in transit to a job site, or at the job site itself if it gets damaged. So the coverage is pretty universal that everyone will use would be small tools coverage. So again, if you're an electrician, a carpenter, and you have tools you're taking to the job, you definitely want inland marine coverage on those tools. Inland marine coverage is even more important for people like excavators. They're using large equipment. Or carpenters or roofers who are using things like lifts, things like that as well too. Those items are going to need to be specifically scheduled on a policy where they're specifically listed, and you tell what value you want those insured at. Another important thing as well too, and we're talking about heavy equipment and things like that, is you can have coverage for rented equipment as well too on your inland marine, where or anytime you rent equipment, you automatically have coverage up to a certain dollar amount as well too. So if you're going to be renting equipment at all, that's an important coverage to have on the inland marine. Next is commercial property. As a contractor, you may or may not need this coverage. Where you would need it mostly is if you had a office building or storage building that you're using for the business, where you needed coverage on the building. And then also if you needed coverage for any business personal property inside the building as well too, is where the commercial property coverage would come in. Oftentimes with contractors, you may not have that exposure, or so that's going to vary a lot depending on your individual business. Next is commercial auto. Obviously any contracting business, you're going to be using vehicles to get to and from the job site. And again, this is another really important coverage, especially auto liability, because this is something where insurance companies are seeing claims costs just go higher and higher due to the increased cost of medical expenses, the increased cost of parts and labor for body repair. And so this is probably the line of insurance where we're seeing the most increases on. And the parts of that policy are going to be obviously your liability if you get into an at-fault accident, and where you have liability, comprehensive and collision coverage if there's any damage to the vehicle itself. Another important coverage is liability for any auto use for the business or hired a non-owned auto liability. Basically meaning that if you would use another vehicle that you don't own, that you do have liability coverage for that as well too on the commercial auto. Next is workers' comp. If you have any employees, here in Illinois, it's the law that you have to carry workers' comp insurance. And you want to anyway to protect your business and for financial security. And workers' comp covers from $1 and any injuries employees do suffer while on the job, and also lost wages and things like that as well too. So it's incredibly important. It also is based on payroll as far as the cost. And it also is subject to audit, just like the general liability. So if you're able to have the general liability and workers' comp with both carriers, with the same insurance company, a benefit of that is that you normally can just do one audit instead of having to do an audit for each insurance company. Here in Illinois, you do have the option as an owner to either include yourself or exclude yourself from workers' comp coverage. So that's something I recommend talking to the agent that you're working with and looking at both those options to find out what the best option is on that. And lastly is a commercial umbrella coverage. What that does is it provides it's an extra amount of liability coverage over your general liability and commercial auto and workers' comp. And normally, most contractors starting out would look at a $1 to $2 million or umbrella policy. But depending on your individual situation, that can vary as well too. And again, it's important to talk to an experienced agent to find the coverage that's going to be best for you when it comes to the umbrella coverage. So this is a general overview of the insurance that you're going to need as a contractor starting out. Again, depending on your trade and your individual situation, and the coverages you need are going to vary in the amounts, and that's why it's really important to talk to an experienced agent to be able to help navigate you through that process. If you'd like to talk about insurance coverage for your new construction business and would like to reach out to me, you can do that by phone or text at 217-932-2267. Or you can email me at Dan, D-A-N, at ShoreMurphyKasey, ShoreMurphyCasey.com. Thank you.